I hope you had a really nice coffee break. Now, I'm extremely honored to be on a panel full of amazing female leaders, each of them fantastic, experienced leader in their fields. They are bringing really amazing knowledge, expertise, experience, and I'm truly honored to have a chance to hear from their expertise, to talk about solutions, maybe also challenges, and especially because in this industry it's really difficult to find truly full female leaders panel. So again, I'm truly honored that I can moderate this panel. Let me first introduce the panelists. Some of them you already had a chance to get to know and to listen to their amazing, really very informative and insightful keynote speeches and presentations. So let me start with Adina Stoica. Please correct me if... Stoica, sorry, yeah. Okay. So Adina Stoica, you're a legal director with many years of experience. You are coming from one of the most prospective country in the CEE region, where there's a lot of potential for renewable energy projects. So we are very happy to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. Then we have Rosetta Karova. Thank you very much. So Rosetta Karova, thank you very much for coming and to be with us. You're an international consultant on energy and climate law. You have many experience also working in international institutions, also private projects, and we are happy to have you here and to learn from your extensive expertise. Thank you very much. Should I add any of your experience, or
no,
it's fine? Thank you. And then we have Leonore Gewessler. Thank you very much to be with us. We already were impressed by your keynote speech. Thank you very much. And Nicola Kofler, thank you very much for your presentation. We are happy to have you here. Impressive experience, a lot to learn from you. So you're head of asset development at Wien Energie, right? Let's start with a key question. So we heard that pace of renewable energy deployment remains inconsistent despite clear European climate targets. And my question to all of you is, from your perspective, what are the most significant barriers, either from legal perspective or operational perspective, delaying development of green transition in CEE region? So we heard already some of them, but what would you summarize as key barriers?
Okay, maybe I can start.
And also, if you want to be more positive oriented, please just focus on solutions. Bring us some solutions. What do you believe are solutions? So we can also focus only on solutions. So if you believe there's enough challenges, let's focus on solutions.
I hope you hear me, okay? Very nice to see you, everyone. And actually I was thinking that in the first part of the discussion, they were mentioning a lot of challenges and barriers. And I found this as a bit pessimistic, although this is the reality that we are living now. But in the context of the war, which I think, even though we were not affected directly, there were some consequences on the independency that we wanted to acquire. I think also the transition to renewable was the good solution that we mutually agreed that we can go forward in order to also to secure our electricity, but also to make it in a very sustainable way for a long term. So in this context, I think on a very short period, also the European legislation managed to put some principles or some objective that help the countries to enhance the renewables, because we can be very much aware that there was the first wave of renewables, then was like a pause, and on 2020 I think it started the second wave of renewables. And because we have this like only 5 years of the second renewables and another phase, another technologies, I found that good steps were taken. And when I'm thinking about the legislative steps, I'm thinking about the European directives, which yes, we have some steps to start in the national legislation, and many legislation were implemented at the national level. And here I would like to mention about the CFD legislation. I know that some of the countries are very much used with this legislation, and is a mitigating factor for a lot of investors, because I interacted a lot from the investor's perspective. So if I see a legislation, I see also how I can help the investors to enhance their development and also to get the return of investments. Because by the end of the day, it's also about this, besides, of course, sustainable matters and independence of electricity that we are all targeting. So in terms of the CFD, I found that is a very good mitigator, but in the same time it can be a barrier, because it's a competition over there. And if the market is putting their prices very low, then I would say that this, from a solution, this might trigger, how to say, a non-competitive prices in the market. Other than this, I see also from the private sector, I think they moved very fast, maybe faster than the authorities, when they started to make frameworks of agreements such as O&M, APC, PPA. These are like general instruments that everyone can accommodate based on their commercial negotiation. So despite of the legislation, I think the private sector also have their have a thing to say and a word to say, and they managed to fasten their negotiations. In terms of public system, I think steps were taken, and here I'm thinking to one-stop shop, which is part of the RED III directive, and a lot of states already implemented this. I heard that Austria is managing already very good on this. In Romania, we are still having some issues. We are at the beginning of this, but in the short term, maybe we will achieve also consistent way of getting the permits from one authority. Just a summary of this. I will also let our colleagues to get a comparative perspective. Thank you.
So everything is said, I would say.
You also touched
you took a lot of things. Just from our perspective, when we have a pipeline, we have the budget, we want to invest, we are ready to go. And for us, it's, as I pointed out in the presentation, or at least I wanted to point out, it's the pace of the permissions, the grid access, also the investment incentives like PPAs. That's actually for us the limiting factor. From the responsibility, I would say we are somewhere in the middle in this triangle of supplying energy security. Mm-hmm. We want to decarbonize, and of course we want to invest. So out of this, I would say all the points you were mentioning are very valid for us, and for us it's important a quick, streamlined, fast-track permission, as Italy, for example, is having for this, what I was mentioning, for the solar panel, for this PV plants. Yeah, a very transparent, clear, and also aligned way of managing the grid access, as I said, and of course to de-risk the project at the beginning with PPAs or CFDs, just to take out a little bit of the uncertainty and the project risk. Otherwise, you said everything. From my side, there's nothing to add.
Nice.
I don't know, maybe I hand over.
I will just take over and add again a policymaker perspective to it, and I'd like to do it on 3 points. The first one is acceptance, societal acceptance of the transition, and I have the feeling, listening also to the debates or looking back at the debates in council, if I heard colleagues from the region, they struggle much more than I do in working with their constituencies, with their society, with their voter base in the end, to see this is a good future, this is an affordable future, this is a clean, healthy thing that will actually work. And I think in order to put to the forefront the idea of we also need to work on societal acceptance of the transition, I think the way projects are planned is extremely important, how participatory, how much community involvement, also in terms of community involvement, like we did with energy communities in Austria, the integrity of the projects. In Austria, we will lose the work for hydropower if we go to the very last pristine alpine river that will have a huge cost in acceptance and for a very marginal benefit in electricity consumption. So integrity or production integrity of the project, and I think a debate that has accompanied us a lot in the last years is electricity cost. And I think altogether around the sector we have to be better in. We all know it's the cheapest way of producing electricity. We have to be better in ensuring this cheap cost somewhere ends also on consumers' bills. And if we manage that, I think we'll do huge steps in acceptance. And then a lot of these questions, like how to build acceptance for bigger projects, how to make sure I think this is really a key issue for all of us to work on. The second point I wanted to add is the financing. I think that's something where there's different models around, and where you always hear there's a lot of private sector capital is there, so how can we leverage it? We worked a lot on electricity market design over the last years, and everything that's needed there. We built our own financing law in Austria, the Renewable Energy Expansion Act that works with CFDs. We have to accept this is a learning field where we will get feedback from the practitioners saying, okay, this will work, this doesn't work. But I think that the financing question is a key one. If I look again if I zoom out and look at the European level, also there we need to make sure that we keep money to where we have common goals, because there's a limited pot of European financing also in institutions like the EIB that are especially important in the region. If EIB starts to fund anything but renewables, then we do have a financing issue also, the European Investment Bank, then we have a financing issue in the region. And the third point, I heard a lot of calls for legal certainty and legal clarity, and indeed that's something where we do have a good basis at the European level with the renewable energy directives, with all the work we did there. Again, coming back to what I said before, I think it's crucial we make sure in the implementation we don't water it down or we don't create empty shells. And I'm very happy if Wien Energie next to me can help in that, because in Austria, just to give you a perspective why it's also not so easy in Austria, energy policy is not national level policy, it's actually regional policy. So we have 9 different permitting schemes in Austria. Austria is not such a big country, yeah, but 9 different permitting schemes. To come over that, you need a 2/3 majority at the national level. And so to build that will be a key question for the implementation of the Renewable Energy Directive 3 in Austria, because otherwise we have 9 different one-stop shops, 9 different goals for renewable expansion that don't actually deliver because there's so many loopholes. So there's a lot of details to work on in the actual implementation. But if a lot of people, I know I'm a bit repetitive in that, if all of you speak up, it's a lot of help to reach exactly these things. So acceptance, finance, and please help with the legal basis.
Okay, so last but not least on this first round, thanks a lot first of all to the organizers, so Daniel, Rahul, Tanya for reaching out. It's indeed a pleasure to be here and to talk to you with all these practitioners and working on real projects, as I like to say it. I don't come from the policy making side. I do work as international consultant now, but always working with international organizations. I have basically always worked with the beneficiaries, so always with the policymakers, with the governments, regulators, so national institutions. So I come from the perspective where I have always assisted them and worked with them in overcoming national challenges when complying with the European legislation. But the region that I am always focused on, I have been working on, is not the European CEE. So it's the third countries neighboring, so basically the energy community countries, Western Balkans, but also Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia. Most of them having this European perspective and having also the legally binding obligations to comply with European legislation. And when thinking about, because this is the first round and then we will go into more details, I believe, afterwards, what are the main issues that we are facing? So now, currently, I'm working with, so Montenegro just adopted last year a new renewables law, but aligning with the second renewables directive. Serbia is looking already into aligning with the third renewables directive, and I'm now currently working with Macedonia where we are drafting the new renewables law, and we are borrowing elements also from the third renewables directive, so not to lag that much behind. What I see in all these countries, and then also on energy infrastructure projects in Georgia and so on, the issue of permitting. So it was also my main point. So I know it sounds repetitive, as you say, but I think it is very important to bring this up. And I also saw the infringements against the EU member states, thinking if 14 of them have not implemented it on time or rightly or correctly, or especially these two provisions, 15 and 16 on the RAAs, I mean, maybe the problem is not that much into the students. I mean, there are certain issues. As you say, only Austria has 9 regions to overcome, and this interinstitutional cooperation at national level as well. So even though the countries with which I work, they have, as you say, streamlined provisions, and now I can give you better news from Macedonia, the energy law has just been adopted and published last week. So there the authorizations, at least the parts on the grid connection and so on, is dealt with, the resource adequacy part and similar. Now we will do the same for the renewables law. So I think it is extremely difficult. And aligning on the even the silence of administration principle. So I mean, this is a legal panel, I would say, mostly. Even on such an issue, like, what do you do when there are so many interlinked steps and you need to depend on one authorization, one decision after another? I think I read only one nice example. I don't remember if it was Denmark or somewhere in the EU, where actually in the online platform, as an investor, once the deadline is over, the authority has not responded, you can download by yourself the decision, and then you go forward. I'm afraid this is not really possible in many of the EU countries, and certainly not in the region. We will dig into these provisions maybe a bit later on the acceleration areas, designation, spatial planning. But the second point is the electricity market design. So the countries with which I work, and you will have a separate panel on this, discussing the electricity market development, these are small markets. The market coupling has not been finalized, even though now it's ongoing, so hopefully it's a process that will bring in the liquidity, increasing the market, absorption capacity for the renewables is important. Only Serbia has intraday market at the moment, the others have day-ahead market, and we all know about the renewables, it's of utmost importance to have intraday market. But what I'm happy to say is that in the countries with which I work, this is also an ongoing process. So the time of having these long-term feed-in tariffs for small hydropower plants, I'm very happy that it's over. Now all these administratively feed-in tariffs, and we will discuss this maybe later on the support schemes, this is over. taking over balancing responsibility by state-owned companies for the small investors, this is also over. And hopefully now they're also working on implementing and developing the balancing market, completing the market cap link, increasing the market. So these, I think, are all good news. Yeah, besides the challenges, I think there is a good work going on also outside of the EU.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you. Now, Adina, may I ask you to explain us more about, from your expertise and experience, how do you believe that in a private sector and from investors' perspective, so you were talking about solutions and commercial contracts importance. How do you believe, especially in Romania or in CEE region, the structure of commercial contracts, early cooperation with international investors can speed up renewable projects and investors investing more? So despite the risk, uncertainties, but how this can help, because we all know that sometimes ensuring that they invest despite the risks, so to find the solutions around with commercial contracts, structuring the deals.
I think we're already circulated some of the examples, good practices about Romania, meaning that Romania is a very good country to invest, at least from the project that you displayed. There were a lot of megawatts that were developed, and not just about the resources, but also about the practitioners over there, I think. When we are talking about the contracts, okay, this is something that the parties can regulate, but also this type of contracts, even if you're acquiring an SPV, a project company, or you're entering into some construction agreements, they all have a national legislation part. And all the time the contracts will be linked with the national legislation. When I have to think about solution is that I'm all the time thinking about what our investors are requiring. And because I had experience with working with many investors from different jurisdiction countries, the problems were so different, because they are coming with what they are accustomed with, the rules of the house, and now they want to invest in a foreign country. And that's the part when all the time I have to make like a short introduction about how is the regulation in Romania, what you should take in consideration when you would like to invest, what is predictable, but also what is not predictable, and also to assess your risk of investment. And because I think 1 month ago I was reading an article from European Commission that they want to make a common legislation for labor work regarding the business loan. They want to make something that can apply to all the countries. I was thinking that in some points this can be also applicable for renewable energy legislation. Because yes, we have directives, but these are giving just direction to the countries, how to implement and how to custom with the nationality rules. And I was thinking that this might be a solution in terms of the legislation, and in terms of the contracts. What can I say? It's when it's about the private contracts, it's the matter of negotiation between parties. But when it's about these incentives, European incentive, I really have a good example that I still don't have the answer about the CFD. That was a very, like last year we had the first round, and that was a premiere for our country and our investors that were very excited that they can have an instrument to have predictable revenues for a specific period. But in the agreement there was a clause that was stating that in case the operator, Opcom in our case, will have some, can mutually terminate the agreement without reason. So basically that was the clause. And because I found this clause so reasonable, I was trying to ask what is happening in other jurisdictions, what is the practice? And the answer was like, no, this is a binding legal engagement in front of the investor that we can have certain prices for a period of time, 10 or 15 years, which is very important for them. So, you know, it's like, yeah, you bring the investment and then you want to make sure that the return are having a path. This is one thing. Another thing is that there are some incompatibilities between a PPA and a CFD, because you have to inject the electricity directly in the national grid if you are entering into a contract for difference, because it's important also to define the terms, while you have to install a separate metering for the electricity that you would like to sell it under a PPA agreement. Of course, for an investor, this means that it really makes to have to take the balance of how they can distribute their production. This can be a very good thing in the future, and that by the end of the day, this can be a very good solution. Another thing, because we are discussing about the PPAs, that's also a solution. Until very recently, this was blocked, at least in the Romanian market. We didn't have this until 2020. It was forbidden to enter into a PPA. You are only allowed to inject in the grid. Basically, now we have this opportunity, but still the market it's just by now making the steps towards it. So. Because you were talking very nicely about acknowledgement and acceptance, I think for this it's also the educational factor, and for this it's a lot of an ongoing process. That's for sure. For a long term, we have all the time to invest also in the training in order to have acceptance and also evolution in the legislation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this insightful explanation of solutions and development of how to speed up and how the knowledge is important and awareness.
Yeah,
also.
I think what I wanted to highlight with this CFD example is that at some point authorities are reluctant in undertaking responsibility, because we know that this mechanism of CFD by the end of the day is financed by the consumers with taking tariffs of the electricity. So I can understand the rationale behind of the authority that, yeah, in a case I will not have sufficient funds, then I will have to be able to exit the agreement. This is just one case. And I think this is also related to the education and how you make a system inside the authority in order to make sure that you can engage in something for a long term.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you very much. Nicola, you presented amazingly all about the challenges related to permitting, grid access, land ownership, and in different countries. And what do you believe, from your experience and from your perspective, so definitely harmonization of legislation is required, so it's a must, it needs to be speed up on European level. However, still from a pragmatical perspective, do you believe, from your experience, this cooperation with other investors, joint ventures, local companies, so also establishing renewable projects that are not just PV but also in combination with energy storages and so on, are these also solutions that are pragmatical, so not to wait to get a solution from a state, but really to be proactive when investors are investing in projects? Do you believe these solutions, or from your perspective and experience, did you see those solutions to also be pragmatical?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. it's dramatic, and it's actually the way to go. That's what we are doing, what I think everybody is doing. On the one side, I'm coming now again from the investment risk side, to mitigate, to split the risk, for sure. But also to speed up when it comes to establish projects. For example, I just talked to Adina. We are quite successful, or we do have a long history in Romania, actually. Why are we successful there? Because we have a very close cooperation with the Catholic Church there. I mean, it's not another investment company, but locally. I mean, yes, I'm sorry.
Please tell us more.
No, but for sure, if you want to speed up and if you want to progress, it's one very important step to cooperate with local corporations. On the one side, you have your local expertise. Then you have the trust of the population. You have a long-term perspective, because both, for example, the Romanian example now, both of us, we do have long-term perspectives. We don't have the issue with the land ownership. We don't have to discuss, because this is then owned with our partners. Yes, the model itself is the way to go. We also do it, actually we do it in all our countries. We always cooperate with others there, and especially with local companies.
Perfect, thank you very much. So, early involvement in local, early involvement and cooperation with local communities, companies, it's also very important. Now, Leonora, if I may, if you can add also, from your experience, broad experience, what was the key success in Austria from a legislation perspective that you're very proud of? So in terms of speeding up the green transition. Of course, as we said before, Austria is really seen like a hub for green transition in CEE regions, so it's a role model.
I mean, there's never, and I mean, I know everybody in this room is aware, there's never a single bullet or one single law that will make the transition happen. And the experience of the last years was rather you finish one thing, and then before you look twice, you realize, but in this law, something else needs to change, because this might be, so the interconnectivity in all these subject matters is huge. Nevertheless, you always have to start somewhere. So where did we start? We started with the Renewables Expansion Act, which is a model to do investment and investment subsidy, but also Marktprämien. Market premium. Okay, thank you. Sorry, losing my English. Through CFDs, double-sided CFDs. So guaranteeing this investment security over a certain period. And it's financed through, as you said, through a premium on the electricity bill. So there is a premium on the electricity bill. That was the core of the law. But of course, we tried to integrate a lot of other things in it. And from transparency in grid access, one of the most fought over things in Austria, still some way to go, yeah, to energy communities. And this is actually something that I would really like to highlight at every step of the way, because Austria is really leading in the European Union on energy communities. We now have around more than 3,000 active energy communities, and it's one of the best ways, I think, or I see in Austria, to generate acceptance. And that needs, of course, because these are new actors. There's incumbents, and here comes a new actor. What kind of responsibilities do they have? What kind of support schemes do they have? How kind of disruptive can they be? This was all huge debates, but it really it is really a prime model of how a new energy future can look like. And if you participate in an in an energy community, and you see the people on their mobile phones looking at how much PV do they produce at the moment. You know, this is what they are proud of and telling their neighbors about. Not anymore how many PS the new car has. It's how much electricity are they producing. And this is the kind of buzz we need that will also generate acceptance for bigger utilities and installations, and that's why this is one thing where I'm really proud that this really worked in Austria. But yeah, it's one step in a long journey.
Impressive, really, role model. Thank you, Leonora. Thank you very much. Now, Rosetta, you were talking before about how important are also for CEE region and green transition in successful green transition, energy transition in the CEE region, also this member states of energy community. And what are the solutions that you see that still can bring this, so European Union and energy community as the whole unit in CEE region to develop in the same speed, so not to fall behind, or what are the challenges, why the development is not equally quick? What are your experience, or what would you be your suggestions in this from this aspect?
Yeah, thank you. Many questions in one. I mean, this is the different energy community than the one that now we heard about. So it's one that consists of the European Union and countries.
Exactly.
I mean, contracting parties.
Exactly.
So yeah, let's be politically correct. So many legislation, but that's what gives us lawyers job, so that's good. So many legislation, I mean, it's a legal battle. You need to run into a puzzle and to find your way in every country. Indeed, it's different and equally difficult. I mean, one thing they have in common is they are members of the energy community, so they have also legally binding obligations to comply with European legislation. So they have to follow suit. This legislation is adapted to a certain extent to them when incorporated in the energy community, but not much. So this is mostly institutional and deadlines alignment. What is different is that it comes with a certain delay per se, because once the EU law becomes law in the European Union, after being negotiated within the member states, tailored for French, German standards, then it takes a year, two, sometimes more, to be incorporated in the energy community. And only afterwards they have obligation in 1 or 2 years to comply with it. So let's take the Renewables Directive. They had to transpose the Renewables Directive 2 by end of 2022. Now they are still in the process of doing it. So obviously there is a delay with the first step. They don't have still the legally binding obligation to transpose the RED 3. But we are already looking into this, because we cannot just wait. I mean, as you say, the investors are coming. They want to see the legal certainty, also streamlined provisions on permitting, environmental impact assessment, and then on small hydro, on PVs, where you can build, how you can build. What sometimes also happened is that obviously these countries have different legal culture, a bit different institutional setup. Different negotiation techniques with incumbents, with companies, so network strengthening. It's another point that is very important in order even to have the renewables energy communities to live there. Now we are still talking about completely different concepts. It's still about the incumbents moving towards renewables. So I don't know, you have in Macedonia, ESM is investing into wind power plants. So the biggest investors are still the former incumbents, and then what is good is, as I said, moving towards the market premiums, moving towards CFDs, and commercial PPAs are not yet there. I mean, in Serbia you have CFDs, but we are still moving. For instance, in Albania you have premiums that will be converted to CFDs once the market becomes liquid. So when? I mean, the chicken and egg problem. So when is that? When do you take this decision? And then at the same time, investment in the networks. What I was seeing now, for instance, even in my country, I come from Macedonia, they are telling me, yeah, you cannot necessarily invest in your PV on the rooftop because our distribution grids is saturated. Fine, then invest in the grids. I mean, we have also the obligations, also these countries have the obligation to have, and sector coupling was mentioned before, there is now the electricity regulation, which also, these are all of them are NSUE members, so the NSUE is taking them into the union development plan, and they have to do the network development at national level. This is not necessarily what they see happening. And the contracts, I mean, as I said, these are, when you talk about PPAs, until very recently, but even still in some of the countries, you talk about PPAs backed by the state. So you have the market operator paying a fixed premium and so on. So this is completely different than a commercial PPA aluminium company with a generator of renewables. So these are still concepts that are coming. I don't say it's backed, it comes with a delay, but they are making their way to be there. And the electricity legislation, I mean, they have not completed the transposition of the clean energy package. And in the EU, last year, there has been changes already into the electricity directive and regulation precisely for this, introducing CFDs, PPAs in the electricity regulation itself. So let's say there is experience, there are the European mistakes from which we are learning, but we are also making our own, and yeah, it takes time, but it's a way to go.
Thank you very much. Now I have a very quick question for all of you, just yes and no, so that we still see how passionate are we about a green transition after talking about the challenges and solutions. So why do you believe, from your perspective, coming from different, representing different stakeholders, despite all the various challenges, do you believe CEE regions is still very attractive for investors and for private capital to invest into the market despite the risks and uncertainties? Yes or no?
Yes, definitely yes.
Thank you.
For sure, as I mentioned.
You managed to get me to a very short last answer, yes.
Okay, so shall I say no? I mean, just to contradict. No. But I actually wanted to say a full sentence besides this yes and no. It's that, as you said, the laws are as good as they're enforced. Their enforcement is good. So if they're not implemented, they can be just perfect and not work. So we have the imperfect laws, but yes, I think they still attract investors.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much. Before closing this amazing panel session, please, I will invite all of you to give a key message for the audience. So, key solution or message or suggestion. So, for audience to keep in mind and stay passionate about green energy transition, please. Or a takeaway. What should be a takeaway?
Well, I think the energy transition is possible only by mixing our backgrounds and our professionalism, I would say. This is something that I'm also doing because I'm a lawyer by origin, but I'm also a student in TU, where I'm studying a master in science. I think it's very much interconnecting area where you cannot progress without the expertise of the others. And in terms of keeping excited about energy transition, I think we should all hear the thoughts of the engineers, the thoughts of the lawyers, the thoughts of the financial team. I think it's very, I'm talking because I'm coming from a corporation, but I'm sure on the state level it's also very similar. But this cooperation is very important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, from our perspective, I would say we have to act quick and fast when it comes to a transparent permitting, aligned permitting system. Also, when it comes to the grid connections, then everything should be anchored in a cross-border collaboration, and of course under the guideline of EU and national regulations. Then I would say our public institutions, they should show that they really want to do it. They really want to do it with speed and full engagement. And I think if all these framework or challenges which we were talking about overcome, or at least the signal is given from the public institution, then the private investors are coming. And I think we all should stick to it, be patient, and go for it. There's big potential left, as we mentioned already at the beginning. The CEE market is underutilized, I would say. Yeah, let's go for it.
Thank you very much. So be proactive and cooperate. Thank you.
As I mentioned before, I'm totally convinced renewables is a disruptive technology, and this is the future. If you look at global investments, this is where the money goes. The question is at what speed and at what scale. And so if we talk about the authorities or the policymakers, never underestimate there's different kind of policymakers and there's different kinds of people in this. And there's one part of the policy field that's trying to make this transition an ideological fight. Just because we don't want renewables, no matter what it means. They're trying to make an ideological fight of this. And our common task is to make sure that the rest of the political spectrum doesn't fall into this trap. That means whoever can help, and that's all of you, to say this is technically possible, it's economically viable, and it's socially accepted. This will help for the rest of the political spectrum. So also those who are not as passionate about the energy transition as I am, to move along. And so that's why I said I end with a thank you and a request. So that's my request. Stay passionate and speak about it to those we need to convince.
Perfect. We will stay passionate. Thank you.
And yeah, building on this, I mean, it is important sort of awareness and information sharing. And starting from what you said, Adina, and now the last statement, that's a bit our destiny. No, as lawyers, we always work with engineers. And when I did my PhD on energy law, there was no energy law as a topic at that time. So you always work with engineers. And the first thing was with market liberalization, the system will fall apart. Don't touch here. Don't. This is not possible. We don't do this. It's the same now, no, with renewables. I mean, we see what happened in Spain a couple of weeks ago. We had something similar in Macedonia last week. A few months ago was Montenegro. So, like, we really need to see also what is then keeping the system. I mean, in order to sell the story of renewables and transition, you need to know also what the base load is, what the alternatives are. And you can, so I believe also, and what I see the policymakers are struggling with is to sell this to the voters and saying, yeah, we are closing, you know, these are countries where I work with 1 or 3 thermal power plants, mostly on coal, lignite, and then you're telling to your voters, we are closing this and we will rely on import, because, you know, we have then the wind and the sun, but when they don't blow and shine, we import. And don't worry, I mean, now you move to heat pumps, but yeah, your heating bill will be 700 euro a month, and this is much more than a salary. And this is what happens in some of these countries that I work. So I think also showing that there is an alternative that will keep the system running when there is no sun and wind, the storages, the batteries, so all the new technologies that are now also getting regulated in these countries, I think this is equally important.
Thank you very much. Yes, so changes are always difficult, but it's important to keep going and to stay passionate and to learn from each other and to cooperate. Thank you very much for this amazing panel, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. This big applause for you. Amazing panel. We invite you to the panel to stay here for an official picture, please, and everybody invited to take tacos for lunchtime.
Just a picture and then tacos. Yeah, because we have more before eating. Here. Picture. Okay, just a moment. Nice.
Here we go.
Thank you. Mr. Kofler.
For the pictures,
Oh, of course.
if it's possible.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, of course.
Go for
Maybe
it.
ladies
Yeah.
first, huh?
And you take the interview.
Okay. Thank you so much. I feel so privileged.